I would start by asking, and let's start with you, Lena. How is it that China regulates from a broader perspective non-use cancellation actions? Is there a grace period? How does it work in China? How many years for you to need to start using the mark? And how does it work in practice? And we are here about talking about practice when it comes to someone challenging another person's registration based on non-use. Thank you, Lena.
Yeah, sure, Rafael. Glad to make some introduction of the overview picture of the use requirements in China. Well, only when I prepared for this webinar, I realized that our 3-year grace period is different from the grace period in Europe or in Brazil, probably. In the Chinese law, it said that any trademark may be cancelled if it stopped using for continuously 3 years from registration. It means that for the first 3 years, you also need to use. Actually, if you stop using even in the first 3 years continuously, you will have the risk of being cancelled. I mean, the trademark. Basically, China is the first to file country, so the use requirement is not as like in the US. So we do not require the use before filing an application or before being registered. Not even intention to use. So in this respect, it's close to the European practice, but according to the current Chinese trademark law, in principle, the trademark application should be filed for the purpose of use. And after 2019 amendment of the trademark law, Article 4 of the law says that application for the trademark registration that is malicious and not filed for the purpose of use should be refused. That means the examiner can challenge it, actually. If they are suspicious you are filing the trademark not for actual use, for instance, they probably suspect you filed the application to register trademark for sale of the trademark per se, then they may have the right to invite you to provide use evidence or evidence or to prove the intention of use during the examination. It happens already a lot, especially in the recent years, especially when the applicant file a big amount of applications in short period of time. It happens to many big internet companies because they often file like hundreds of trademarks one time or in a short period of time. So one really a top internet company in China received many, and they complained a lot of this practice, but they need to reply by submitting evidence. If they cannot prove the actual use or intention of use, then the trademark will be refused. By saying that, basically, you will receive the registration certificate without proving any use. It's only when a third party starts a non-use cancellation application, you will need to prove your trademark use. It is 3-year period, different from the 5-year period like in Brazil and in Europe. So we always advise the clients to start using the trademark within the first 3 years after registration. Otherwise, it will be a risk to lose it if somebody starts the cancellation proceeding. So that's the basic and overall picture of the non-use cancellation or the use requirement in China.
Well, thank you, Lena. I think that's very interesting because when you file in China, even though it's a first to file country, you also need to be attentive of acting in good faith and avoiding anything that might indicate that you're not actually going to use the mark, but actually just filing it for protective or defensive methods or something like that. But Lena, what happens in China when it comes to amount, when it comes to use throughout the territory, either if you're a small bakery or if you produce all the bread in China?
Right. Well, China is one country, not like European Union has 20 plus countries, but we do have like 31 provinces in China mainland. So the situation probably similar to multiple nation body territories. But I think the rules in this regards relating to this question are more or less the same, or maybe similar, if I put this way. So in China, also there is no explicit provisions on the amount of evidence required or the minimum amount of evidence in proving a trademark use. It is really a case-by-case judgment, and industry from industry and company from company. So really very case-by-case issue. But the basic rule is that you need to be really genuine use. Your use is really to make a commercial use. It's not a token use. I think the examiners and judges are very smart in this regard to tell in most of the cases, so they can tell which ones are like created token use just enough to maintain the trademark. Some probably, although in very little amount of evidence or sales, still can maintain the trademark, the trademark registration. So the examiner will and judge will make assessment in consideration of the different factors, including like which industry it is, what kind of business models in this industry running, and also the marketing or the business customs, etc. So with all the consideration of all these factors, the conclusion will be made after the overall assessment. Similar to Klaudia's case, if you are with too little evidence, it is likely to be decided as a token use or symbolic use, which will not be sufficient to maintain the registration. In one case, the concerned trademark was registered in class 25 on the clothing products, and the registrant submitted a perfect evidence train, including the contract, the invoices, the picture of the products, etc. So with this evidence chain, it's complete to prove time, all the elements they need to prove. But eventually the examiner decided that it is too little. And in the clothing industry, within several years, you only have one sale. It's really abnormal for such an industry, and it's not make a successful or even not a normal business. In such a case, such a use was determined as a token or symbolic use, so the trademark was cancelled. But if in another situation, for instance, the product is very high value or very precious, and the business or the consumer's needs is not high at all. So to sell like one time a year probably can feed the trademark owner the whole year. In such a case, it will be sufficient if it's only one sale. So it really depends on the industry. And then regarding the evidence chain, I mean, it's not, we need to prove several facts to in with the evidence. Generally speaking, it is to prove who, when, and where used which trademark on what goods or services. Only to prove all these information, these facts, the evidence can be accepted as valid or as sufficient. But it's not necessary to include all the information in one single evidence. So as long as the evidence train as a whole can prove the use period, which mark, who are using, and on what goods, then it could be taken as valid and sufficient trademark. When regarding back to the amount of evidence, I should point out that some of the use are definitely not enough. First, just to publish the trademark information or the registration or ownership of the trademark, it's not enough. The second situation is to use the mark in a non-public domain is not sufficient. It won't be regarded as commercial use, such as to use internally in the office, but not to sell to the consumers. Or you produce it, but did not put the products into the market. Such use are all taken as internal use, so it won't be sufficient. And the third, just to provide a trademark license agreement, but without any actual use evidence, it won't be sufficient. So these are also not sufficient use case. Regarding who can use, I think according to the submission by different national groups when answering the study questions, it turns out that in most jurisdictions, the user can be the registrants, can be the licensee, can also be other authorized parties. In China, the same. So here, think regarding the person, it's not strict. So even the unauthorized party who used the trademark, but afterwards was approved or agreed by the trademark owner, it will be fine.
May I use something here?
Yes.
Yeah, may I add something here? This is very interesting. The last issue you said that unauthorized use shall be also treated as genuine use. So this is different in Europe, you know. If this is unauthorized use, it will not be used as the genuine use because it was not the intention of the trademark owner that this trademark is used on the market or on this relevant territory. So this is really interesting, and this is an important difference, I think, to remember to all of us who want to prove the genuine use in China. Because in my mind, it will be impossible, you know. I would never thought about sending you this kind of evidence. So it's very interesting thing. Thank you.
Yeah, in some cases, we could not find the direct use evidence by the owner or by the licensed party, but third party may do that without awareness of the trademark registrant. For instance, some media, some influential, the what's the word for that? Those celebrities or on the internet who sell the product without. Yeah, influencers. They introduced the product into China, and then we took these evidence as submitted with the office, and they were accepted in some cases. Of course, it's case by case, but it's very likely to be accepted.
What about publicity material? Is it considered sufficient, or does it need to come with effective sales or effective agreements? How does it work in Europe and China?
Well, In China, advertisement is a way of using the trademark. In most of cases, if you advertise it, for instance, in TV show, in an exhibition, or on the internet, in many cases, it can be accepted as valid use, unless it's really too symbolic. Just once a year, probably just enough to maintain, then which will be taken as token use. Other than that, generally speaking, it can be sufficient to maintain the trademark. I think the rationale behind it is you don't need to be successful in business. You advertise it, you try hard to sell, but at the end, you do not make it. It's still allowed. So if you can provide those marketing materials, and also to prove that such materials are actually be sent to, or they reached the consumers or potential consumers, it is likely or very likely to be accepted in such a case. So marketing materials, advertisement materials are valid. One of the valid, evidence in China acceptable. Of course, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, yes.
Great. And there's another very good question here from Anna Hackers about what happens when the good is given out for free. And we did have a case here in Brazil a few years ago. It's the manufacturer of computers and software, and they actually changed the market a couple of decades ago when they decided to offer their operational systems for free. So you could just keep downloading the new versions, and each new version would have a new name and then a new trademark. But at some point, we had to evidence use of it. And the Brazilian Trademark Office actually accepted the download links and evidence that that the software was embedded in some of the products, and that happens when the device already has some of these softwares, and the links for downloading and updating the operational system. And I don't know any case of it, but perhaps with free applications for cell phones, for instance, it might be the same. I don't know what happens right now, what's going to happen with the current regulation on the BPTO, because now they adopt a more stringent standard. But if it's there, it's in the marketplace, a consumer can have access to it, why not? I don't know if you have any case law on that, Lena or Klaudia, that you wanted to share, but I think it's, as Lena said, it all comes down to the rationale behind it.
Right. Well, in China, to have a giveaway of free products to be given to the consumers together with the other services or other goods can be a way of use in many cases. There are different conclusions in different cases, but we saw in some cases, at least, the judges and the examiners do accept that. I think it is reasonable to accept such a way of use, because although it's free, it looks like free, but it's not really free. It either go with the other sell the products or other sell the services or serve the overall business advertisements of the registrants. So I don't think it's really free. Even if it is free, it's still a use. It does not say that you have to exchange it with the money or with a price. So I do believe the giveaway products or giveaway services can be a use to maintain a trademark registration as well.
There's another very sensitive aspect that has changed here in Brazilian law, which refers to a change in the trademark itself from the mark that is being featured in the certificate of registration. And when you try to evidence use of that mark, you only have some sort of newly designed mark, a mark that has been used with some small changes, sometimes big changes, a different color, a different letter font. In the past, Brazilian office was very, very strict about it. If the mark being in use did not match exactly the mark showing in the certificate of registration, the mark would get canceled. But in this latest regulation, they changed it a little bit, saying if the changes do not affect the overall appearance of the mark, the distinctive nature of the mark, then it's going to be accepted. Here in Brazil, you cannot amend the registration. It's going to still be the same way that it was applied for, but the changed use will be accepted as evidence of use of the mark as registered. So, Lena, how does it happen in China?
Well, in China also, once the trademark is filed, you can't change it at all unless requested by the examiner. For instance, you put an R there, which should not be part of the trademark. Then the examiner probably will ask you to remove it. If not requested by the examiner, you are not allowed to change anything after filing. So it happens often. The actual user trademark is different from the registered trademark. Just as the resolution of the AIPPI concluded that as long as the distinctive character of the trademark not altered, then it should be taken as valid use. It shall be tolerated. In China, we follow this rule. But the question is, how different is different? So this is a difficult judgment, and also it's a very case-by-case judgment. We may, I want to show you some examples so that you will have a more direct idea how in China we assess what is unaltered trademark. So let me try to share. Oh, not this one, different one. All right. Can you see now?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
Great. So let's see. Well, here I make some summary of the general rules on whether a distinctive a character mark is altered or not. So in general scenarios, well, there are some common scenarios where the examiner or the court will think there is no substantive change, or the distinctive character of the mark is not altered. So the first one is to change the positions of the compensate element. For instance, to change the up-down arrangement to left-right arrangement. You will see some case later. And the second is to use one distinctive part of a combined mark. For this one, there is a bit of debate, but in some cases, we do see that the trademark office maintain the registration in such a case. And the third one is to use color for the black and white mark. And the fourth one is to use the mark together with other marks. That means on the same product, you will see multiple marks it's also allowed. And the next one is to omit or add the non-distinctive elements. In this case, in almost all the situations, such a change is accepted. And the next one is to change the font or the size of the letters or the characters in the trademark. And in some other situations, the judge or the examiner will consider the business customs to decide, although there is some change in actual use, but such a change is very commonly seen in the business, in the industry. So they are accepted. For instance, for the service marks, if the trademark owner use on the side sign born or on the gate, on the door of the shop, they will make some change to their trademarks due to the condition. Such a change normally acceptable. And in some other situations, like the marks with devices, then when the parties mention the trademark in the contract, in the invoices, it's very often that they will omit the device part or use some words to describe the device part. Then it is also allowed. But in China, there is one special exception for this rule, which is probably different from Europe and maybe Brazilian as well, which need to be confirmed by Rafael. That is, if the used trademark itself is a registered trademark, then the trademark office will cancel the contested trademark. They think it's not necessary to maintain both. Since you only use one of them, why we should maintain, keep both the trademarks for you? So in such a case, probably to register more trademarks is not always a benefit to the registrants. Now let's look at some examples. The first group is to use the Chinese characters part only for a combined mark. You see the two register marks are both combined marks with the Chinese characters and English words or Latin letters, and the other even with the logo, but the actual used one is only the Chinese characters. They were accepted in the final decision. Although you see before the trademark office in the cancellation review case, they thought it's not sufficient. It altered the distinctive character, but finally the court decided that it does not change the distinctive part, so they maintained the registration. These are the one group of the cases. The second group is to combine with another trademark. I think this is easy to understand and also more reasonable to maintain, since the register mark still can be separated or easily seen in the actual used mark, like WSB is still there as WSB, although there are some other parts in the front, and the logo plus the boy word, but the logo can still be seen and distinguished. So in these cases, they are also maintained and accepted as valid use of the registered trademark. The second one, the third group is to add the non-distinctive elements. But here, the used trademark or Chinese character trademark. But let me make some Chinese lesson here. The last character for the first trademark is Wang, which means network or internet, or just net. This trademark is registered in class 42. this character is deemed as non-distinctive. So to add this character, the judge thought does not change the distinctive part of the trademark, although the trademark is a combined Chinese character and the Latin letter trademark. So eventually it is maintained, the registered trademark. But the second case has a different or the opposite fate, because in the second case, the trademark office thought it's valid use. It should be sufficient to maintain the registration, but the court ruled that it's not. The reasoning of the court is that the registered trademark there are two characters, although with design, the two characters means nature. But with the designs, nature, the word is not very distinctive in class 5, but it is registered because it has very special designs. And then the actual use trademark is 自然义, which means natural drink. So there is one character more than the word of the registered trademark. The court explained that, first of all, the design is totally different because the actual use one is just a pure normal character, but the registered one with special design. And second, natural drinks and the nature, the meaning are different. So the court did not accept the altered use as sufficient or valid use of the registered trademark. So these are different conclusions with a similar use. And the fourth one, I think, without challenge, first to change the position of the composite trademarks. All the tribunals agree that it's valid use. They only changed the up low arrangement into left and right. And the last one is exactly the one I mentioned, especially that if the use trademark itself is a registered trademark, then the challenge trademark will be cancelled. Like in this case, the actually use trademark is another registered trademark by the same registrant, and then the first one, the challenge one was eventually be cancelled. So with all these rules, I will just want to give you a very quick overview of different situations where the trademarks can be, whether they are substantially different from the register or not.
Thank you, Lena. This is very interesting and very difficult as well. So if I'm having an issue in China, I really need a Chinese attorney to tell the difference between what's valid and what's not, particularly with the Chinese characters. Lena, you mentioned influencers and social media. So how does it work in China?
Right. Well, the online use can be accepted as valid use for sure, but it needs to meet certain criteria. The criteria actually, generally speaking, the same as the assessment of offline use, and is also a case by case assessment. Similarly, as the offline use proving, the registrant should prove when and where, who use the trademark on what goods and services. So I think for the online use, the territory, I mean, the use territory assessment is probably the most challenging one, since there is no physical boundary for the internet, for the virtual world especially, and the different factors should be considered. Normally, what will be considered include like the accessibility of the internet, or of the web page, or of the app by the consumers in China, whether the actual shipment of goods happened, I mean, into China happened, and like the currencies or languages adopted on the website or on the virtual apps. So the assessment will be made after considering all the different factors in this regard. But for the evidence, if you download a web page, then the difficult part is the time proving when such a for instance, offer for sale happened. You need to prove. This is also difficult. So nowadays, some of our clients, that what they do is to do the evidence preservation from time to time and keep them in the dossier so that when they need it, they can use it. And nowadays, with like blockchain or other tools, such evidence preservation become very cheap and reasonably affordable for most of the trademark owners, and also simple and easy. So it's advisable to keep collect evidence and keep evidence from time to time, just in case you need them one day to prove the actual use.